Hello and welcome to What's the Tease, a podcast hosted by myself, Pillow Talk, where I'll be interviewing influential personalities in the wonderful world of burlesque, from local legends here in South Africa to global superstars. In this episode, the very first one, we'll be finding out what's the tease with my first guest, PoChop.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning indeed. So, PoChop, you are based in Chicago, right?
I am, that is correct.
Yeah. Is that where you're from?
No, I was born and raised in a small town in Missouri called Poplar Bluff. And then I moved to Chicago. I fled the the country when I was 18.
Okay. And so you've been based in Chicago pretty much since then?
Yeah, ever since, yeah. So over 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I guess like 15 years. Not to show my age, but yeah.
Are you allowed to call yourself a Chicagoan?
I would
point?
call myself a Chicagoan, but I feel like because I didn't get the Chicago like grammar school experience, I have to still acknowledge that I grew up in Missouri.
I had the opportunity to travel for the first time to the States in 2013. And that's when I actually saw you perform at the, yeah.
Did we talk?
No,
Okay.
we didn't, unfortunately, because it was at the New Orleans Burlesque Festival.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was at the House of Blues.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it was maybe the Bad Girls Night. I know that they had like 2 nights at the House of Blues. So I can't remember which themed night it was, if it was the Queen's Night or the Bad Girls Night. But I have a feeling it was the Bad Girls Night.
Yeah, it was the Bad Girls Night.
Yeah, and that was the first time I got the opportunity to see you perform, and literally you were so enigmatic on stage, and I was just like, and I've been following you since then.
Wow. Yeah, that was towards the beginning of my burlesque career. I think that was probably only the like second or third burlesque festival that I had participated in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's wild.
Oh wow. Yeah, yeah. So that's how I got to know you. Very fortunate enough to have, had that experience.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how long ago that was. I mean, I feel like, that particular festival isn't really. That particular festival isn't. I don't know if it's even still around anymore, but it's not. Back in the day when I was performing, I feel like that was like almost like a rite of passage. Like that was. It felt like from that festival, it like opened up a lot of stuff for me here in Chicago. But I mean. Yeah.
And so, like, from your performances, of course, when I saw you that night, and then from following you and seeing all the stuff that you've put up online, it seems that you are quite well versed in several dance disciplines. So, like, is that a product of formalized training or just natural talent?
No, it's definitely formalized training. So I grew up dancing. My mom introduced me to dance when I was like 3 or 4. I think for her, she says that I was like a very energetic, active kid. I was always be bouncing around the house, and she would always try to get me to sit down. So like putting me in dance class was her way of like trying to get me to exert some energy. So I would sit my little butt down at home. And like as soon as I started, I mean, it's just something that I latched onto. It felt like what my body was asking for, like a way to like channel energy and just kind of process my own emotions. So from an early age, I clung to dance, and I pretty much, I mean, that's why I came to Chicago too. I studied dance here at a college. Yeah.
Okay. Like, what would you say some of the styles of that formalized training influence your style of performance?
So I studied, growing up, I studied like ballet, jazz, and tap. in hip hop. And then when I came to Columbia, I I took school to Chicago. I started taking modern dance, and I would say modern kind of really helped me connect more like with with how I move my body. So I would say modern for sure. And then I took some African dance classes, so for sure African as well. And I don't think that you can. I spent so many years, probably 8 to 10 years, training in ballet that it's like in my body as much as I try to like get rid of it.
Yeah.
So definitely ballet too, even though I wish it wasn't there sometimes.
No, but I think like that's amazing. What I love about burlesque is that, okay, firstly, it's because it's not seen as it's not recognized as a formalized form of dance. So it's influenced by several other elements. So for PoChop, what is PoChop's perspective on the art of burlesque?
Um, that's a big question. I think my perspective is
Do you know what I mean? Because I kind of feel like when something isn't formalized, then there's no theory behind its definition. So it's always open to interpretation.
Right.
I mean, there are like standard elements that are practiced within the art form, but I feel like every artist that takes part in this medium comes with their own thing, and their own and defines it in their own way. And so that's why, like, I didn't want to say, what is your definition of burlesque? It's more, what is PoChop's perspective?
Yeah, I think my perspective is like a working a working class burlesque artist. So I don't really. I try to be very purposeful about when I am presenting glamour on stage. Yeah, so I'm always trying to present the working class. Like I want my costumes. I want everything that that people experience from my performances in some way to seem accessible. It's not above them, but it's like meeting them at eye level.
Having seen you, and even just by seeing the work that you create, that you so generously put online, I definitely one gets that feeling. How did you get into performing burlesque? From, of course, having this innate, your body wants to do this, and be a performance artist using the medium of dance. So how do you find burlesque in that world?
I had a close friend. Let's see, I got into burlesque because I was surrounded by, at the time, I was surrounded by theater people. And I had two friends who had started performing burlesque in a group. I think they were called the Ripettes. And one of them was Jeez Louise.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the other one was a performer who I believe she goes by Olive Juice now. So they were in a troupe, and I was going to see their shows, and G's was going to be out for a couple of upcoming shows, and essentially they asked me to step in for her. And that's kind of how I started. And then from there, it just kind of like snowballed. Yeah.
So Jeez Louise was into burlesque before she kind of got you into it.
Yeah, absolutely. She probably, I don't know how much longer she had started. Probably a couple of years she had been doing it before me. Yeah.
So as a burlesque performing artist, how would you define your style? Like who and what are your influences?
Interesting. Well, definitely Jeez Louise. I also think praise dancing, which is something that I was thinking about after you asked the question of what dance disciplines influence my burlesque. Definitely praise dancing. Dancing in church has greatly influenced my burlesque style. Any black artist, I shouldn't say any black artist, but black people in general, the black experience,
Yeah.
Nina Simone, there was somebody else. Oh, Audre Lorde.
Yes.
Black women in general, but also the black power arts movement is a huge influence for me too. The '60s, Black Panthers, yeah.
Like when it comes to burlesque, a lot of people do kind of look at it as a westernized, and generally when people say westernized, they're talking about white or, you know, Caucasian
Right.
influenced. I know in South Africa, people sometimes don't think that necessarily it's an art form for them or for yourself or like for ourselves, because you don't often get to see a representation of yourself on stage. With all your research that you've done and your experience, was there ever a time where you weren't seeing people of color doing the art of burlesque? Can you remember like a time in the States when that possibly changed?
Right, right. I mean, it's funny. Somebody just asked me this morning about black burlesque history, and I embarrassingly don't know that much about it. I'm like right now beginning to. I'm fortunate enough to have access to like the old Jet magazine archive. So like literally yesterday was the first day that I could go and look at it. So I'm really excited to be able to like kind of dig deeper into that. I can say though, when I started, I felt like there wasn't a huge representation of black artists. I mean, I know that Jeezy felt the same way. That's kind of why, and she started her all black burlesque
juke
review,
joint.
Jeezy's
Yeah.
Juke Joint. Yeah. So, I struggle. I mean, I think that now there's definitely a lot more of us visible and creating and working. But I think, you know, for me, I created PoChop because I didn't see her on stage. I didn't see
girl,
that.
yeah.
So, and I wanted,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I think that's why that's why I create the work that I
Yes.
do, is because I want somebody to feel seen. Like just like how I wanted to be seen when I went to burlesque shows or theater shows. Like I'm always looking for my story or trying to
Yes.
listen for my story. Yeah. And it's still like I could talk for hours about burlesque and like the lack of visibility
Yes.
when it comes to color, shape, you know, disability. Like I think that in some ways burlesque is still enforcing certain beauty standards that I think that we have to look at as a community and decide if we want to still you know adhere to those standards. I think we have the ability to be like, no, beauty looks like a wide range of people, and let me show that to
Yes.
you, and look at this person celebrating who they are. But it's hard. It's hard because I feel like there's politics with
Yes.
everything.
I always just see burlesque as an education. You know, I'm like, as long as you have a diverse range of artists to choose from, you know, you can make your show however it is that you want it to be, and the audience that comes with it will find the shows that represent themselves and that resonates with them.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think like you said, burlesque is education. So I think that it is up to the producers to like challenge their audience. Or at least I personally think so. Yeah. But I also think that we really haven't started having this conversation in burlesque for that long. Like when I performed at the back, when you saw me in New Orleans, I probably was one, if not the only person of color in that show.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but I'm almost certain that I feel like I could.
I think you could pretty much, you could look and see, but I pretty much agree with you for that night, most definitely.
Yeah.
And then I think, of course, the other person of color was Lulu Duchess.
That's true.
And then another element that you do, of course, explore in your burlesque is drag. Drag is associated with female impersonation, of course, with an emphasis on portraying hyper feminine tropes. And then, of course, so that would be the drag queens. And then, of course, the vice versa would apply to the drag king personas who are portraying a hyper masculinity. When you incorporate drag into your performances, what is your expression?
It's a wide range. When I'm approaching drag, I'm thinking of it from a wide range. Like, it depends on the act. I definitely love playing with hyper masculinity. I love making the joke out of a male, especially like as a woman with a built body. I feel like oftentimes when I step outside, I can guarantee you that somebody is going to say something to me about my body, specifically a dude. So I think for me, it's a way, when I'm presenting hypermasculinity, it's a way for me to take that power back. I also like play with drag in the way of like remembering male family members, specifically my grandfather. I built like a couple pieces that are kind of just like me wrestling with my memory of him. Yeah, and something changes. I feel like, I mean, same thing with burlesque. Whenever you put a costume on, you shift. But there's definitely a shift that happens for me when I like apply the facial hair and pack. I love it. It's interesting how the body will carry, how your weight shifts in your body.
Yeah.
It's a good exercise. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Because then, of course, there's that element of, or the conversation of, okay, so is burlesque also a form of hyper femininity?
Right. Of performing. Yeah. I think for some people it can be, for sure. I think even, for me, when I'm trying to
glam.
perform, do the glam, exactly, or do the classic, I'm for sure performing a different form of femininity than I would normally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oof, it's uncomfortable.
You're like, corset?
For me.
Damn.
Yeah. Right. I don't even think I've ever, one time did I try a corset. And I was like, oh no, I'm not doing this again. I think I cried after the performance.
And I mean, I've just seen, I don't know if it's your latest character that you've put up, your ode to Mary J. Blige.
Yeah, I kind of consider that act a little bit drag. Like, yeah. Yeah. I created that Mary J. Blige act for Jeezy's Juke Joint. I think it was maybe 3 years ago.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. And I just honestly, it's maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But I just love performing that act. It feels so good to do on so many different levels.
Yeah, it's super entertaining.
Yeah.
I was entertained.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, so we spoke about your website, and totally agree with you. I absolutely love your website. And in particularly, I like the brown pages. It's a publication or a blog zine, which kind of meets a gig guide, meets the diary of an artist, meets a book club,
Yeah.
So like, what was the inspiration behind putting that up? Just as like insight into PoChop.
Yeah, so I created the brown pages because I like something about social media feels really uncomfortable for me. Like, it's particularly promoting myself. So I wanted to find a way that felt good for me to promote myself and my work. So I started the brown pages. I was like, well, I want to blog. I wanted a blog, and then I started looking at the blog, looking at like the templates for the blog, and I was like, well, I don't want it to look like that. Um, and a part of my creative process has not always, but has kind of evolved into me mapping out my thoughts and ideas on brown paper. So I knew I wanted that to be a part of it. Um, so it kind of just, yeah, it has slowly, I think they've been going on for 3 years, but have slowly evolved into what you said, like a blog
Yeah.
zine, which I love that. And I probably am going to start using
Because it
that
literally
because
is.
yeah, it's not, I've been calling it a newsletter. That was my
Yeah.
intention. Yeah, so it just kind of has evolved from being like this newsletter to this, I don't know, this like interactive, yeah, blog zine. I'm
You're most welcome to it. Yeah, because I particularly also really enjoy the layout of it. Is that something that you collaborate with somebody? Like, do you, as artists, of course, like some are able to create their vision.
Yeah, no, it's all me. I don't, yeah, it's all me. It all, like, doing it kind of brought up all of these things from my childhood that I would do, that I just kind of like lost on the wayside. So like, I grew up right when the internet
Yeah.
started. That's also old, but I grew up right when the internet started, and one thing that I like found that I started doing was like, I don't know, there used to be these like websites called, I think they were like Angel Fire and Geocities or something like that, where you could like build websites and like customize stuff. And I used to spend hours doing this. So I think a part of me just like re-tapped into that side of me, and yeah, so I do all of the designs myself.
Yeah, like hats off to you because it
Yeah.
really does. Like it when going through it, it's like it feels like this experience of being inside the artist's mind a little bit because it's almost like there's scrapbooking and then there's you have a very good grasp of the English language and how to communicate your thoughts, and like you
Yeah.
can be reading something that feels like sort of you need a higher education to understand it, yet it's grounded and it just kind of it speaks to the people. Like that's the feeling I get from when I'm like reading each edition.
Wow, thank you so much. I mean, if, I I when I was in college, my minor was fiction writing. So I did study a little bit of writing, but my partner is a poet, and she's also the editor of the Brown Pages. So
Yeah,
she definitely, I feel like I can't talk about the Brown Pages without shouting her
yeah,
out, because she will definitely like help me with my words, as well as help me like sometimes I will come up with this complicated ass line like layout, and she'll be like, I don't get this, like you know what I mean, like she's like, you need to edit this, or just like helps me make it so it's not just like a cluttered mess that is in my brain, but like
yes.
it makes sense. Yeah.
Well, you got a
Yeah.
good team going there. So, given our current situation in the world, what are you getting up to these days?
I take this as a sign from the universe that I need to sit down. Honestly, I think that also being a full-time artist, like I love to grind. I love to just overbook myself and hop from one thing to another and never sleep and not take care of myself. And so like I'm taking this time to like, yes, I am creating, but it's super slow, and it's like it's
Yeah,
restful. I'll say that. And it's like also just like I probably spent the first 2 months just like sleeping,
yeah,
eating, and like journaling and chilling, like, and just processing too.
yes,
I think there's a lot of emotional shit that is happening right now, and I don't I feel like I needed to just like slow down and process that. Um, that being said, I mean, I do miss performing. I wish that I could connect with the idea of a virtual show, but like I I feel like so much of what I'm drawn to as far as performing is like that connection, that like ability of creating an experience and a relationship with the audience within seconds, and like going somewhere with them and then leaving after 3 to 5 minutes or an hour or whatever. But like I think it takes another set of skills that I don't have to do that online.
Yeah.
And hats off. I mean, there are people like, I think Jeezy is definitely doing it, and a bunch of drag queens, Chicago-based drag queens, are doing it. And I'm impressed. Yes. I'm like, I don't know how you pivoted that quickly. Like, there's non-for-profits and organizations who aren't able to do, who are trying to figure out what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, it's skillful, and I'm also a Taurus. I'm like, I don't like change.
Yeah. When I think about, the way I produce a show, as you do when you create a performance for the stage, there's a beginning, a middle, an end. It's a journey, it's an experience, and it's just something I feel like no matter what one does, you can't recreate that without people in a space.
And we're competing with so many other things. Yeah. It's like, I think it's like, as soon as I get a device in my hand, my attention span goes down. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm so used to like just flipping, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm on Facebook, I'm on a website, I'm reading this article, I'm watching the opera, I'm doing like so many things now has been converted to a screen that I think that as a performer now we're competing with like so like a lot. I think it's very difficult.
Yeah.
I also think it's funny because I feel like now we have this sentence that's like, during these blank times, and people say different things, difficult times, trying times. But I read somebody say revolutionary times, and I was like, that's what it is. I'm like, it's messy because hopefully we are changing. Hopefully the systems that were in place will not be in place any longer. And like, and that we come out of this, of course, different, but different, hopefully, for the better.
Yeah, indeed. Well, PoChop, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me on What's the Tease?
Well, I'm coming to you.
Oh, I'm going to hold you to it.
But like I was saying, I'm coming to you. You will not have to come to me, I promise. I am excited to know that you're doing the great work in Cape Town.
And on that note, I'd like to say thank you to my very first guest, PoChop, for joining me on What's the Tease. To all the listeners, if you like what you hear, remember to give us a follow. All our information will be in the description below this podcast. I'll be posting a new episode of What's the Tease every week, so tune in. Bye for now.